At my father's funeral, the silence wasn't a sign of respect. It was a countdown. We were standing in the glass-walled penthouse of the Rhodes Plaza in Seattle. Outside, the rain was blurring the city skyline, but inside, the air was sharp with the scent of expensive lilies and even more expensive betrayal. My stepmother, Helena, stood by the podium, her black veil perfectly draped, looking less like a widow and more like a queen who had finally gotten rid of the king. Next to her was my brother, Julian. He was checking his gold Rolex every 30 seconds. He wasn't mourning. He was timing the start of his new life. Then came the moment that stopped everyone's heart. Julian stepped up to the microphone, adjusted his $5,000 suit jacket, and looked out at the room full of billionaires and board members. He didn't talk about my father's legacy. He didn't talk about the 40 years of sweat it took to build Rhodes Global Logistics. He looked directly at me, sitting in the back row, the quiet daughter who lived in the warehouses, and he smirked. "My father's death is a tragedy," Julian's voice boomed through the high-end speakers. "But nature abhors a vacuum. Today, I am proud to announce that as the sole heir and new chairman, I am merging Rhodes Global with Thorne Logistics. We are cutting the dead weight. And Vivian—" He paused, letting a cruel laugh ripple through his chest. "Vivian will be stepping down from her clerical duties, effective immediately. The janitor is finally being retired." The room was dead silent. Julian beamed, waiting for the applause. And that's when it happened. A sound echoed from the front of the room. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't a cough. It was a loud, dry, unmistakable chuckle. It was a sound I had heard my father make 1,000 times before he fired someone. And it was coming directly from the speakers. Before I tell you why my father was laughing from the grave and how I turned my brother's merger into his own professional execution, I need to know who's listening. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing the reach of our community. And if you've ever had a sibling or a boss take credit for your hard work while they sat in the AC, hit that like button. This story is for the workers who finally decide to become the owners. Now, let's go back to the beginning, because to understand the revenge, you have to understand the theft. For 10 years, my name was Vivian Rhodes, but in the company directory, I might as well have been a ghost. While Julian was studying business at a private villa in Switzerland, which really meant blowing my father's money on high-stakes poker and vintage Ferraris, I was on the ground. I started in the dispatch office at 19. I moved to the rail yards at 22. By 25, I was the one who designed the automated tracking system that saved the company $40 million a year in lost cargo. I was the silent architect. I knew the name of every crane operator in Long Beach and every union rep in Detroit. I didn't mind being the invisible hand. I thought that in my father's eyes, competence was the only currency that mattered. I was wrong. My father, Arthur Rhodes, was a giant of a man, but he was old school. He believed in the firstborn son. He believed in the face. Helena, my stepmother, knew exactly how to play into that. For a decade, she dripped poison into his ear. "Vivian is a wonderful worker, Arthur," she'd whisper over wine. "She's built for the back office. She's stable. But Julian has your fire. He has the image of a leader." So, while I was fixing supply chain collapses at 3 a.m., Julian was being groomed for the throne. He was given the titles. He was given the bonuses. He was given the credit for the software I wrote. He started calling me the janitor. He'd walk past my desk and drop a stack of papers saying, "Clean this up, Viv. The adults have a board meeting." I took it. I took it for years, Until the night I caught them in the boardroom, 2 weeks before Dad passed away. It was late, nearly midnight. I had come back to the office to grab my laptop. The lights in the executive wing were still on. I heard voices, Julian's arrogant drawl and another voice I recognized instantly, Silas Thorne. Silas was the CEO of Thorne Logistics, our most ruthless competitor. My father had spent 30 years fighting Thorne's attempts at a hostile takeover. "It's simple, Silas," Julian was saying. "The old man is on his way out. The moment the will is read, I'll be the majority shareholder. I'll sign the merger. You get the road's infrastructure, and I get a 20% stake in the new conglomerate and a $50 million sign-on bonus. No more work, no more trucks, just a beach in the Maldives." "And your sister?" Silas asked. Julian laughed. It was a hollow, ugly sound. "Vivian? She's a glorified secretary. She doesn't even have a contract. I'll fire her the same day I sign the deal. She can go find a job at a post office for all I care." I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding against my ribs. It wasn't just that he was selling the company. He was selling the 4,000 employees who had been loyal to my father for decades. He was going to gut the empire for a payout. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I went to the one person who knew the truth about the digital side of our empire, Marcus. Marcus was our head of security and IT. He was a guy Julian had humiliated 100 times, calling him the computer janitor and making him fix his wife's iPad. "Marcus," I said, walking into his darkened office, "I need to see the legacy ledger, everything. Every personal loan Julian took from the company, every cent Helena spent on her charity foundation that actually went to her offshore account. And Marcus, I need you to find the patent filings for the routing software I built." Marcus looked up, a slow grin spreading across his face. "I thought you'd never ask, Viv. I've been keeping a folder on them for 5 years. I call it the Red File." Then came the funeral. The atmosphere in that penthouse was electric with greed. Helena was greeting guests with grief-stricken eyes that were clearly calculating the value of the jewelry in the room. Julian was acting like he had already been crowned king. The Vanguard and Thorne executives were there, sitting in the front rows like vultures waiting for a meal. When Julian took the stage to announce the merger and fire me in front of the entire industry, he thought he was delivering the final blow. He thought he was burying me along with our father. But as his insult echoed through the room, Marcus, sitting in the tech booth, hit the play button. The chuckle that filled the room wasn't just a recording, it was a wake-up call. The massive 20-foot LED screen behind Julian flickered. It wasn't a slideshow of childhood photos. It was a video of my father, Arthur, sitting in his hospital bed 3 days before he died. "Julian," my father's voice rumbled. He looked tired, but his eyes were like steel. "If you're watching this, it means you couldn't even wait for the dirt to settle before you tried to sell my life's work." Julian's face went from smug to pale in an instant. He turned to the tech booth shouting, "Turn it off! Marcus, shut it down!" But the screen locked. A massive red bar appeared across the top. Internal audit in progress. "You always thought I was blind, Julian," my father continued on the screen. "You thought because I didn't say anything, I didn't see the gambling debts in Macau. I didn't see the $14 million you borrowed from the employee pension fund to cover your losses. And I certainly didn't see your secret meetings with Silas Thorne." A collective gasp went through the room. The Thorne executives looked like they wanted to melt into the floor. "I knew you were a shark, Julian," Arthur's voice boomed, "but you're a clumsy one. You signed every loan agreement Peter and Vivian put in front of you without reading the fine print. You were too busy dreaming of the Maldives." The screen changed. It showed a scan of a legal document. Clause 12 of the Executive Loan Agreement, my father narrated. In the event of a breach of fiduciary duty or attempted sale of proprietary assets without board approval, the borrower's shares are immediately surrendered to the company's lead developer. Who is the lead developer? My father asked on the screen. He smiled. A real, genuine smile. It's not you, Julian. You don't even know how to log into the server. The screen showed the patent filing for our $200 million routing software. The owner wasn't Rhodes Global. It wasn't Arthur Rhodes. The name on the patent, in bold black letters, was Vivian Rhodes. Vivian didn't just work for this company, my father said. She owns its brain. And as of this morning, she owns your shares too. You didn't inherit an empire, son. You inherited a debt of $22 million to your sister. And I believe she's calling in the loan today. I stood up. I didn't need a microphone. The room was so quiet you could hear Julian's heavy, panicked breathing. Julian, I said, my voice cold and steady. The merger is canceled. The deal you signed with Silas is legally void because you had no authority to sell my IP, and Helena... I turned to my stepmother, who was clutching her pearls so hard they looked like they might snap. The $4 million you moved to the Caymans last month. Marcus tracked the IP address to your personal laptop. The authorities are in the lobby. They aren't here for the funeral. They're here for the embezzlement. The aftermath was a blur of justice. Helena was led out in handcuffs, her widow's veil caught in the elevator doors. Julian tried to beg, tried to say it was all a misunderstanding, but the board members, the same ones who were just smiling at him, now looked at him like he was a contagious disease. I walked up to the podium. I looked out at the 4,000 employees watching the live stream in our warehouses across the country. My father started this company with one truck, I said. He built it with his hands. I built it with my mind. And today, we're going to start building it with our hearts again. There will be no layoffs. There will be no merger. We are Rhodes Global, and we're just getting started. As I walked out of the penthouse, Marcus was waiting by the car. He handed me a tablet. Market's up 4% since the video ended, Viv. They like the new boss. I looked at the rainy Seattle sky and felt a weight lift that I hadn't even known I was carrying. My father didn't just give me a company. He gave me the one thing Julian could never buy, his respect. You know, my brother called me the janitor because he thought my job was to clean up his messes. He was right about one thing. I did clean up. I swept him and Helena right out of the building. The lesson here is simple. Never confuse silence for weakness. The person who knows how the machine works is the one who ultimately controls the switch. If you loved this story of Vivian's revenge, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We share stories of resilience, justice, and the quiet ones winning every single day, and I don't want you to miss the next one. And I want to hear your take. Was I too hard on Julian? Or should I have sued him for every last cent he had left? Let me know in the comments. I'll be down there replying to as many of you as I can. I'm Vivian Rhodes, and this was the fall of the Rhodes Golden Boy. I'll see you in the next story.